Uh, Hello. We're waiting for people to join. Uh, Hello, everyone. Please leave a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me and see me well. Hey. Hello, hello. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining today. Uh, uh, this is my second session. Uh, 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 Yesterday I had a session about Linux scripting. So today's session will be about APIs, which is the theme of the current Global Hack Week. So specifically, we'll be looking for how APIs are used in banking industry. Um, so let me first introduce myself. For those who haven't seen me before, my name is Nadir, and in today's session, I'll be your host. I'll be presenting uh, uh, my findings about open banking, how open banking is used in general, uh, and why is it called open banking and how it's achieved uh, to this open status, right? And the first part of the session will be mostly like theory. So I'm going to introduce you some terminology, what open, how open banking is defined, how it's implemented. And in the second part of the session, we will do some practical tasks. So that will include using real-world open banking API published by Plaid. So Plaid is one of the companies which provide APIs for developers so they can build innovative fintech apps on top of those APIs. Yes, that's correct. I think so. Some of the users is commenting, this is the future of money. Yeah, I think so. It's very hard to imagine that uh, the future of finance will stay same because it's one of the fields that is being affected. So we've already seen uh, uh, how finance has changed in the last 10, 15 years. Like we have digital currencies, Bitcoin and other altcoins, altcoin currencies. And this is one of the ways how finance has been shaping. And open banking is another way the finance is expected to change. Like traditional financial applications will be using those APIs published by financial institutions, mostly banks, to so that the services provided by banks will will be innovative. Traditionally, they are a bit like not so innovative services provided, but open banking aims to change that, to create more competition, to deliver a better value to uh, bank users. So I have my slides here. So I wanted to first present those slides so we can really understand what open banking is. And okay, let me. Okay, so let me get started. So open banking is a bit sophisticated concept. It's not an one single API that we might think. Um, Actually, it's a collection of many things. Open banking has its own ecosystem. So this ecosystem contains obviously the API itself. Uh, in this in this in the sense that API is not a real API that you might have used before, where which you can talk and interact with, but rather it's an API specification, and there are some other members of ecosystem. So account providers are one of the members of ecosystem. So these are usually banks, building societies, or companies which are involved in payment. Yeah, let me just quickly answer these questions. If my slides will be available after the session, yes, obviously. I think I have to check with MLH if I can share these slides. But I'm gonna give you a lot of pointers during the session, so we can visit various websites, and then I can show you where the resources are. Yes, thank you for one of our users sharing the link to register for the event. Yes, please register at this link. Is there be security issues with this? So the security issues, the handling of security is delegated to those account providers, which I've just mentioned. So implementing the security standards, following these PSD2 policies are all upon account providers. So so what account providers do, those banks and building societies, is they take these API specification, open banking API specification, and then implement it individually. So this depends on jurisdiction, I have to say. So here in the United Kingdom and European Union in general, there's a government mandate which asks all the if we think of a United Kingdom, because I'm more familiar with this jurisdiction, because this is where I'm based right now. So UK government basically, after this financial crisis of 2008, I believe, so UK government officials, they thought, oh, we have to make our financial system more resilient. We don't want these crash happen ever again. Maybe at that level, maybe crashes will happen, but maybe not as severe as in 2008. So government came up with a way to make these services of banks more competitive, to make the services more accessible and more transparent to bank clients, people like you and me. So what they wanted to do is just, okay, let's those bank clients know what service, what's what for example, checking accounts are available, what savings accounts with higher, the best interest rate is available, or if they want to take loan, what which options provide the lowest interest. Because when we are taking loans, we want the option with lowest interest, right? So we can pay less money back to banks. So what the UK government came up with was a concept called open banking. So the idea was to provide direct access to banks' internal systems, including list of accounts per each client they hold within this bank, and history of their spendings, also known as like the transaction history. So UK government actually mandated, ruled, saying that, hey, this, we have to enforce this to these 9 big banks in the UK. And so UK government actually asked, hey, those 9 big banks to open up their internal systems and make data available through open banking APIs. And specifications for these APIs are published by UK government. So if you can see, there's a web in the slide. There's a website called standards.openbanking.org.uk. So specifications are published there, and UK government asked these major banks follow these specifications and develop an API on their side. And if they follow the specifications, then their APIs will be compatible, meaning that developers like you and me, right? So we can just read those specifications and then refer to any of these 9 banks, let's say Barclays or Lloyd's or Santander, for example, and be familiar with their APIs immediately, because we already know what specifications do, like what functionalities they provide. So yeah, as a result, these 9 participating banks implemented these standards mandated by United Kingdom, and they made those open banking API endpoints available on their developer portals. So we can basically go and see what those banks are. Initially, there were 9 banks, big banks, but for other smaller banks and institutions, it was optional. So we can, I can show you those list of those banks which implemented these specifications. So if we go and see the list, so where you so this web page represents list of banks where which contains list banks which already implemented the open banking specifications. So as you can see, the list contains many banks, not just 9. For others, as I mentioned, it was optional, but they still decided to join this movement. Okay. And so account providers, which are basically banks and payment companies, are one of the participants of this open banking ecosystem. and there are other players as well. So I have to say, in legal terms, those account providers, banks and building societies, are called ASPSPs, which means like account service providers. It's a bit mouthful, but this is the terminology they use. Let me quickly address questions here. If one of our users is asking, is there something like for India? Oh, that's a good question, because open banking looks like it's implemented depending on jurisdiction, enforced, I have to say. So so I know it's enforced in the European Union. Uh, in European Union, it's called PSD2 standard. So this standards policy was created after the financial crisis of 2008, uh, and it has been propagated to all member countries, I believe. It's implemented at some level, and since United Kingdom, I think they wanted, they foresaw that they gonna exit the European Union. they they decided to come up with their own specification for open banking. And for United States, uh, there is no like government mandate, I think, because I haven't seen or heard any US-based banks opening up their APIs based on government's recommendations. I don't know. This is delicate topic to talk about in case of United States, because it's much more sophisticated and complex, the banking industry there. There are rules in federal level, state level. I think they have to be met, satisfied. So I think in the US, there is no such common specification as open banking, at least for now. Maybe I don't know. Maybe if you know anything about it, please let me know in the chats. But I haven't heard. So account providers, are one of the participants, also known as banks. So another participants is called fintechs, or third-party providers, also known as TPP in legal terms of open banking. So fintechs are fintech companies, basically. So what they do is talk they consume the open banking APIs published by those other participants, banks. Um, so why do they need, what do they do with this with open banking APIs? So what fintechs meant to develop like innovative applications using these APIs. That's why access those open banking APIs lets those fintech companies to come up with various types of tools for end users. So one of them could be personal finance like management apps. Let's say you uh, you, uh, you have a bank account and you have multiple bank accounts, and you want to see how your funds are being used, because you swipe your cards or take out cash from ATM every day, and you want to understand like you're where you are spending most of your money, and where it's coming from. If you have multiple income streams, some people do YouTube streaming, or some have side hustles in addition to their day job. So all these income streams coming and all the money going out of the accounts can be visualized or made easier by these open banking APIs. And so those financial finance management, personal finance management apps, so they they aim to help those users, end users, um, and with saving money in the end, so that they can like focus on where to reduce the expenditures, if they are spending too much on like entertainment, for example, uh, since financial uh, condition is not so well right now. Just an example. Maybe it's better to cut down on entertainment or something like that. So open banking APIs help uh, deliver this hidden information to end users, so they can have bigger picture on their financial situation. Um, or another use case of open banking could be that uh, uh, if you have multiple accounts in multiple banks, um, it could be possible that a person could have one, not just one bank account, but multiple, right? One for um, like for deposits from a workplace, workplace paychecks, for example, and other for personal reasons like uh, money for like for personal allowance, for example. And there could be another account to save money, right? And it's also possible that these accounts are not in one single bank, but they're spread out across multiple banks. So instead of having 3 or 4 or more uh, uh, banking applications on your phone, so you can like check each and every one, instead of having that, those fintech companies can use open banking APIs to create one single app where you can view all your account information. It will act as like a one-stop shop. Uh, so you can see all this financial data in one place. Another use case could be like debt management tools for end users. Because let's say you have a checking account in your bank, and the balance goes below zero. Uh, and some banks, they let you go below zero, but others don't. So it depends on how you have like overdraft arrangement is done with your bank. So basically, if you go below zero, what bank does is they let you borrow money until uh, so that you can continue your expenses, continue using your card, for example. Um, but those which don't provide overdraft arrangements, then they just deny whenever your account balance reaches zero. Payment will be denied if you try to swipe it in some grocery store, for example. And the problem with this is that it's overdraft fees that you pay back to the bank, and those fees can be very high. So debt management tools can like help you get some alerts about those overdrafts. If you are below certain balance thresholds, maybe you get like a message on your phone saying that, hey, maybe you better watch your spending. You're about to go below this zero threshold or $10 threshold or something like that. So you can be alerted. So open banking APIs uh, specification at least allows developing such debt management tools. So us end users can be alerted in time of possible misuse of our bank account. Also, we can get like tools from those fintech companies, uh, tools that help us choose the best credit credit card, meaning cards with the lowest interest rates. So, these are important because, for example, let's say we want to build our credit history, right? And then we want to open up like credit card and get uh, start using it, and then increase our credit score. So when it's time to make a bigger purchase, like purchasing a house or a car or some big ticket item, so there's a high probability of receiving loan at better rates. That's why we need, so open banking APIs help finding also help finding like credit card deals with lowest interest rate, for example. And also they those APIs can also help finding like some re reference data uh, of banks. For example, a list of branches, right? We want to know what is the nearest branch of our bank where we are located. Let's say we went to some other city and we still want to continue banking with our financial institution, and we want to know their location of their ATMs, for example, or their branches. And open banking API has capability of uh, sourcing that information uh, from banks. So fintechs are another participants of this ecosystem, uh, and so I'm gonna check uh, what's the um, timing now. Yeah, we're in a good timing. So there are other participants as well. Uh, the third and most important participants of this open banking ecosystem are consumers. So consumers are easier, like they are people just like you and me. So what we want is we want better service from our financial institutions. Um, and for that, what financial institutions ask from us uh, is to share our information, share our data. Those fintech companies which I mentioned, we already share our data with account providers. So banks know our first name, our personal information already. But here, to make this open banking ecosystem work, we may need to share some data with these fintech companies. So fintech companies are the ones, again, which stand between us and our banks. Okay, so they can act, I would say they can act like a middleman. Um, so instead of talking to multiple account providers, we can talk to one single fintech company, and they can like provide these open banking services to us. So that's why these fintech companies ask us share our like personal information. So why question is like why do we need to share it? Like because it's so personal to us. Why? Because we have never seen those fintech companies before, and why would we share our data with them? What benefit do we get? Uh, because the open banking is like regulated at the government level. I think fintech companies, they have a big responsibility to make sure that all the data we shared with them, shared by consumers, are strictly handled. For example, in the United Kingdom, we have multiple standards to handle private information. You've probably heard GDPR, and does it ring a bell? It was like a big topic couple of before pandemic, I think. So government started to mandate GDPR in, I think, in all companies, to all companies in the United Kingdom, companies which deal with private information of consumers. So GDPR is one example that I can be sure that, okay, my personal information can be handled appropriately by fintech companies. So this is enforced on government level, but those fintech companies, they also have their own standards at their local level. So and so I think we have a trust. We have to have a trust with those fintech companies to make this open banking work. So why do I need to share my information with those fintechs? I have like a couple of examples. The first example, for example, let's say we want to track our spending, and so that we can like save up money for our dream holiday. So if we share our data in a hypothetical situation with like budgeting, with fintech companies which provide like budgeting applications, then we can get like the better insight into our like money in cash inflow, cash outflow. So that's the idea. I've never used it, honestly. But it would be good to try. I think I'll probably run like try to install some of those apps provided by fintech companies and try to understand how they work. Another example could be again, like if we want to find like checking account, for example, we want to open an account where we can deposit money, right? And we want to find those accounts which provide better overdraft terms. Again, like sharing our bank account information and transaction history may help finding better deals provided by those fintech companies. So in the end, for example, we may end up switching our banks. If we find a better deal in a different bank, we may end up ditching old bank and switching to a new bank or something like that. Yes, so this is how it is. This is the idea behind open banking. And all these interactions obviously happen through APIs. So fintech companies consume, again, APIs published by banks, and all these specifications for these APIs are regulated by the government, at least in the United Kingdom. I think it's similar in the European Union. And so at this time, I wanted to show you a web resource where how these specifications are published. Okay, so let me go back to screen share web page again. And so what we've seen now is a list of banks which publish their open banking APIs. Let's say we visit one of these banks and see how it looks like, right? Uh, um, so so let's say we want to go to TSB Bank. If I hope they have, I hope this link works. Let me check. Looks like it doesn't work. Slightly different. Slightly different link. So let me share it here. I think this link is a bit outdated, but it's actually this one, API developer TSB Co UK. This one. Yes. So TSB is one of the banks located in the UK, and the TSB published its API to developers outside developers who want to use those APIs to actually interact with data, uh, customer data. So those uh, uh, data, those bank customers' data are available through APIs. So TSB implements, I think, open banking API specification at some level. It may not be full implementation, but it could be like partial implementation. So as you see, so TSB has sec security profile API that I am assuming that it allows authenticating users with TSB systems. Yep, and they also have like account API, simplifies the accessing the account information of bank's users. So if we go here, so for example, we can access accounts, get balances of those accounts. So we provide, for example, account ID, and in return, we can get information about balance. So this is sample data that this endpoint returns. If we say like accounts, provide account ID and / balances, so we can get this sample data, which provides information about balance of specific specific bank client. Yeah. So I haven't used any of these APIs. Why? Why I haven't tried any of them? Why? Because there's a good reason. The reason is because these open banking APIs published by each and every bank requires some level of background check and some sophisticated procedure that I have to follow before I can access those accounts in real life. So specifically, I have to be TPP, meaning like I have to be one of the fintech companies that are approved by FCA. FCA is a Financial Conduct Authority, a government entity that oversees financial activity in the United Kingdom. So as you see here, to use the APIs, you need to become an approved TPP with one or more permissions. So I have to be like a very like credible person or entity before I can access any of these APIs. I'm an individual, so I don't think I qualify to be a TPP at this time. So I couldn't obtain any of the credentials to these banks. So if we go, um, uh, so if we, for example, there's another bank called Revolut. So we can check Revolut as well. What open banking APIs they provide. Um, so Revolut developer. Okay. I think I reference. Yeah, this is the right link. So Revolut is another bank based again in the UK. Again, they also publish their own specification. I mean, their own implementation of the open banking specification. As you see, the government entity, UK government entity, they publish the specs, just the reference data, right? Piece of paper, but the the banks who take those list of specifications and implement, make it real. Um, so in case of Revolut, for example, again, they have open banking APIs published. They have documentation here available. They explain how transactions can happen. For example, retrieve account balance. For example, when you call these uh, uh, endpoints, you can see that you get list of balances, amounts. This is obviously mock data. They doesn't. It's not the real data. It's just they give this for information purposes only. Have you noticed that the endpoints is same endpoints that we've seen with TSB Bank, right? And the payload that we receive from this when we invoke this endpoint is same. It has the account ID, amount, and credential, credit, debit indicator, and other data. Yes, they have to be same, right? Because they follow the same specification published by the government, right? So the idea is once developers like you and me read those specifications and understand how open banking API works, we can switch between banks. We can easily integrate, take APIs published by different banks, and then easily integrate it to our app, right? Because they all follow the same standards. So that's the idea. Again, to access open banking APIs published by Revolut, I need to be a regulated third-party provider. Um, uh, in order to get in order to get this status, I have to go through various checks, which I think I don't qualify personally. Yeah, that's a bit of painful experience, I think, to really like try to like play around with these APIs because obtaining credentials is a big challenge, I see. But uh, so this is how it works in the United Kingdom, in this jurisdiction. But in the United States, its case is a bit different. Okay, I'm gonna tell you how different right after I check comments section. So I don't see any comments right now. Okay. Recording. Yep. Okay. One of our users, viewers, saying that Nigerian CBN implemented same for Nigerian banks in 2018. Yeah, that's 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 what I've heard about as well. It's widespread. It's going. I think it's becoming popular among government entities because I think governments needs to champion this movement, mm, telling that open banking APIs provide better access to financial information for the benefit of consumers, and ask financial institutions to implement those APIs. So that's. I suggest we take like 5-minute break if you people don't mind. I can grab a drink and like get some water. So in the second half of the session, I'm gonna show you. We go more practical. So far we've been more theory, right? So what open banking is and trying to understand its ecosystem. So in the second half, we're gonna play with actual open banking API. And it comes from a company called Plaid. It's one of my favorite companies. I'll tell you why in a second half of the session. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. It's 48 minutes past now. Let's reconvene in 53, right? So while you are taking a break, please post in the comments what's other what do you think so far about open banking APIs? Do we really need it, or what applications you can think of developing using this open banking APIs? Let's say you have access to client information in many banks, access to their transaction information, for example, and what kind of application you can think of developing using this API facility. Please leave your comments in the comments section. I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Gonna mute myself and stop the cam for now. Hello, hello. Welcome back. Please uh, comment in leave your comments so I know that you're still with me, please. uh, if you have if you spend time like to think about what kind of like app you can build using open banking API, please also let me know in the comments. Uh, personally, I thought of one possible use case of open banking APIs, so how I can use it, what um, uh, what kind of app I can uh, develop using open banking APIs. So one of them can be about background checks, right? So whenever let's say we are a financial institution and we want to onboard a new client uh, to the company, right? And we want to understand everything about our new client. So because when dealing with financial information, with financial resources, what companies do is they run various checks. So those checks can include uh, like uh, various kind of like vetting procedures, right? So they vet their clients to understand all the financial resources they're like depositing to the bank comes from credible sources, for example. And um, so one way I can think of developing an app using open banking API is to develop the uh, uh, like background checking app. So I can, for example, type in clients' data information that they presented when they completed the application form to onboard the bank, and use that information to see where that what other financial institutions that client dealt with before, and what were their ranking, uh, what ranking they received from each of these financial institutions. I think that helps me to understand like um, is it good to deal with this client, um, like, are we gonna have like a good relationship with this client? Um, so that information that I retrieve from open banking can help me make these decisions. Um, so um, uh, this helps for retail banks, I think. So for retail banks which deal directly with uh, individual users like you and me. Um, so I think running these background checks on each potential client helps. I think they already run background checks, but uh, with the power of open banking APIs, they have much bigger view of potential client, uh, of their uh, of their background. This is one idea came to my mind. I don't know what you people think. If you have any other more innovative ideas, please let me know in the chat. Yes. So okay. So we've been doing lots of theory during past hour. I think it's time to do some practice now. Let me switch to my slides. So we've covered ecosystem, and now we want to use this ecosystem to actually me remove myself from the slide so you can see. Yeah. We can use existing open banking API published by Plaid. So Plaid is based, it's not a bank, as we've seen like previously. So in the United Kingdom, banks, financial institutions, banks, they publish their open banking APIs, and they have strict rules on who can access those APIs. Right? We have to go through this validation, have to be like legal entities, and have to check a lot of boxes before we can even try it out. But not in the US, looks like. So Plaid is a company that operates in the United States jurisdiction, as far as I know. And so this is not a bank, but what Plaid does is, so Plaid has its API layer, and that API layer connects with US-based banks behind the scenes. So instead of talking to each and every bank, us developers, so we can talk to Plaid instead directly. And so Plaid provides a unified view, unified standard of accessing and retrieving information, financial information from these banks. So that information could be account information, balance information, transaction information, products, what products those banks offer, and many others. So as you see in the chart, so this is server. So we are building our server application, right? It's our backend application, in other words. And our backend application obviously will have a user interface. It could be implemented as an Android or iOS application or web application, depending on how we want to interact with the user. And behind the scenes, our backend app talks to Plaid. So Plaid, again, is a middleman, just which provides open banking API services. So as you see, Plaid talks to multiple banks. So they have a relationship. So banks agreed to share data with Plaid, but this relationship is not mandated by the government. U.S. government looks like it's just a relationship between it. It's done in private level. So. By the way, please comment. I don't see any comments. Please let me know if you are still with me, because I want to see that we're all on this together. Okay, just that's fine if you don't comment, but I'm happy that we have some people still with us in the second half of the session, which will be much more interesting, I think. So yeah, Plaid offers, how can we interact, play around with Plaid? So Plaid offers 3 environments: sandbox, development, and production. So sandbox, we're gonna deal with sandbox. Sandbox basically environment where mock data is present. So we don't deal with any of the real data in the provided by financial institutions of US. That data will be we will not be touching any of that live data. It's sandbox, it's mock data. Still here. Thank you. Yeah, happy. So Plaid offers quick start guide, so we can check out that quick start guide to see what facilities it offers. Before we do that, let me show you quickly how Plaid works. So in generic API calls, because we're in API week, right? So if you have attended other sessions, you've probably seen, in order to interact with an API, what we do is, most of the time, we put API endpoints to our browser. I mean, when forming URL, we put API endpoint, and we pass some kind of API key, right? That API key is published or provided by the API owner. But this is generic, like how it works in most APIs. But in Plaid, security is paramount. So they want to make sure that, because obviously single API key is not enough, right? So what Plaid does is they follow this highest level of security standards, and they introduce various keys when dealing with when passing requests to banks to retrieve their to access their data. So as you see on the right hand side, when developing Plaid-based application, so what we usually do is we have front end and we have back end. So front end is part of the application which users interact with, right? So this is where the Plaid's widget is installed. So the clients can interact with that widget and then provide their data, and that data is passed through to Plaid's services through our server, through our backend application, and then Plaid forwards that data to customers' banks. So I think that explains how it works. We can see it in detail how it works. So obviously we can build this front and back end application and run a kind of tutorial, but to this time I didn't want to write any code in this session. Instead, I wanted to use Postman to interact with Plaid's open banking APIs. So what Postman does is, so Postman acts as a backend application, which we developed already, let's assume, and we can fire invoke endpoints, Plaid endpoints directly from Postman. So Plaid would think that, oh, this is coming from a backend, some backend application that is trying to fetch information through my APIs, which I retrieve data from customers' banks. So what I'm gonna do now is gonna need Plaid developer account. So we go to dashboard.plaid.com, and then we need Postman account. Postman. I've probably I should have account there, and we also have Postman app. So we need all these three pieces to actually interact with Plaid's open banking API services. And so Plaid provides us two pieces of credentials, client ID and secret key. So whenever we talk to Plaid API, we want to provide these two pieces of information in our requests. So if we follow with me, so I'm gonna again like bring up my browser, and then I go to dashboard.plaid.com. So again, well, my Plaid is an entity, right, which sits between us developers and the banks. So when we want to retrieve data from banks, so we talk to Plaid, because Plaid has a relationship with those banks to retrieve to access data and provide that data in standardized format to us, to developers. So what we need is, because I've already set up the set up the environment before this session. So I already have keys set up. So when you can follow along with me. So if you go to dashboardplaid.com, so we need to register first, and Plaid provides two environments for now: sandbox and development. There's third environment, production, which I don't have access. I think I need to make special request for it. As you see, for production access, I need to get I need to go through some procedure, which I don't need it right now. So I go to sandbox environment. So for sandbox, again, like sandbox environment provides mock data. It deals with mock information. You don't touch any live data in the in sandbox environment. So if you so this is how access includes to assets, balance information, income, investments, transactions, which I'm interested in. So yeah, so test with detailed sample data. Yeah, this is what sandbox environment does. And again, we need our credentials to access. So we go to team settings, keys. Sorry, keys. And this is the client ID provided to me by Plaid. So this is unique information. And I also have secrets, secret key that is provided by Plaid. So yeah, we can basically like toggle on and off to see what it looks like, so everyone can have it. It's no problem. Yeah, for now I just toggle off. So this is how we should be keeping it. So when we talk to Plaid's open banking APIs, we need these two pieces of information: client ID and secret, which we see, which I saw here. And now to talk to Plaid's open banking API endpoints, we can use Postman collections. I've already set up Postman collections. Let me start sharing that. Okay. Share screen. Okay. I don't know if you can see the screen. Share. So what I'm trying to do is to share my Postman interface. Not sure why it isn't sharing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No screen yet. Okay, you said no live coding. The question, you said no live coding. Yes, we're not gonna do live coding, but we're gonna invoke the API endpoints because that's the better way to interact with Open Banking API, in my opinion. And are you going to have an example up that we could follow later? Yes. Yes, I can provide some like links to the Postman collections, so we can so you can try it out in your spare time. So the best way to do that is yeah. So my Postman app doesn't want to be shared. So fortunately, Postman also has a web interface, so we can access web interface instead of using native desktop application. Okay. Now I'm gonna go to Postman web.com, launch Postman. Okay. Spaces. Okay, let me share my screen. I have opened it in on a, yeah. I think you can see it now. Yeah, not yet. Yeah, here we go. So I have Plaid API endpoints already set up. So as you can see, I can access multiple data information. I mean, endpoint information from these collections. And so how did I get this? What did I do for it? So first, what I did was I went to Plaid's. I went to Plaid's website and so I'm going to show you how exactly I did it. So let me share another screen. There are multiple screens to share. Just a second. Share screen. Yes, this is the one. Okay. So as you can see, so I'm on homepage of Plaid's homepage, right? And then what I do is I go to Developers tab and I click on Quick Start. So Quick Start. So what we can do with this Quick Start is to, if we want like a full code-based tutorial, then we can follow along this like setup. So we can choose non-Docker, and then we need to set up the front end of our application as well as back end of application, start them up, and then interact with Plaid API using those front-end application. So they are based on React, I think, which I'm not familiar with. I'm mostly familiar with backend development, so I didn't want to show myself as a full stack developer. But yeah, but you can those who are familiar with the React, you can go and see, fire up and see how it looks like. So what we're gonna do is there's a, it says don't want to write code, then go Plaid's Postman collection. This is what I did. So I went to Plaid's Postman collection. It redirects me to the GitHub repo, and here I have to follow these instructions to actually be able to run Postman collections. So I signed up with Plaid to get set of APIs. I've already done that. And I click on this run in Postman. So when you run it, so it creates fork and opens Postman collection collection for Plaid in your Postman application. So this is how I ended up being in here. Now I'm switching my screen again to page where I can show you Plaid endpoints. Yeah. Okay. here, this is how I ended up being here. Okay, I followed the guidelines published in Plaid's website. So now, share with these. Okay, so first I want to tell you that Postman has environments tab. This is where I included my credentials. So if you remember that I was saying previously, I was telling you that we need client ID and secret key whenever we want to interact with Plaid's open banking APIs endpoints. So here I provided mine. I just copied whatever I have. Oops, no environment sandbox. Okay. Plaid. Okay, let's copy it from Plaid's websites. I thought I've copied it, but doesn't look like I did. Your client ID. Okay. So I need to provide those information so I know where to get it. So okay. So I need to go to this page. So I'm trying to retrieve my key information. So just a second. Resource. So I go to Plaid dashboard and I retrieve my keys from here. So I copy and so here for current value, it's right now it's empty. So I just paste my client ID and for here, I paste my secret. So, okay. For sandbox, I copy and paste in here. So those two pieces of information were provided to me by Plaid. So again, I retrieved it from Plaid's dashboard because I signed up for it previously. So I save it. And now I can go to my collections and try to retrieve, for example, try to fire up like some of its endpoints. Let's see what happens. Case it says invalid field, access token must be a non-empty string. So what it's trying to say is so we don't have even if we have this two piece of information, right? This client ID and secret key, we still need additional information to actually talk to Plaid APIs. Again, you see like security is at high standards. We need more credentials to actually talk to Plaid API. So for that, I go to authentication and I create public token. So let me, so we have public token created. So this is not the information we want. What we want this public token exchange to be exchanged with access token. So next we run this access token endpoint. So now we have access token generated here. And if we check our environment, that we see that now we have access token and public tokens are generated. So we will need all these four information when we talk to Plaid APIs. So now we go back to collection and go to retrieve balance and try to run it again. Now we have data coming up from Plaid. So let me see it, show it clearly. So as you see, here I'm imitating the case when a customer, like some end user, trusted their data with me, and I using that customer's information to retrieve list of their accounts, right? So it looks like that customer has many accounts set up with various banks. So these accounts are retrieved from various banks. So as you see, there are multiple accounts coming. Account ID, account ID, account. So there are multiple ones. Now, what as you see that I'm invoking this endpoint, I'm sending post request. So environment URL means that I'm talking to sandbox environment of Plaid. So as you see, like I'm talking to sandboxplaid.com. And what I'm sending, because I'm sending post request, right? So I must be sending something in the body. Let's see what it is. So in the body, what I'm sending is client ID, right? And secret key, and access token. So the three pieces of information is sent every time I interact with Plaid, Plaid's open banking APIs, right? So where do I get this information? Again, like they are here in environment section, right? So client ID, secret key, and access token are already set up. So this is where the Postman retrieves. So Postman is giving us facility, like making our life easier. So we don't have to copy and paste and populate every time every time populate the body of the post request every time you want to interact with Plaid's API endpoints. So what I'm gonna do now is so let's this balance get endpoint gives us a list of all accounts and their balances, but let's try to understand what it does. So I switched to different tab now. As you see, this endpoint, the accounts balance get, right? So this endpoint, it retrieves real-time balance data. So, and what I want is, so I was sending this three information as you see, like all this strings, but there is also another piece of information I can include in the body. So I can say options and then pass a list of account IDs, those account IDs which I want to retrieve, not all of them, but only subset of those accounts. So what I can do is I can go and populate populate this, take this payload in the body and then take one of the account IDs, right? And then here I just formed the new post request, and then here I'm gonna replace it with account IDs, like ID of an account which I want to retrieve, not all, but specific one, right? So I'm gonna send a request again. Okay, this time I received only one account with that specific ID and its balance available. Now currently it's 65, some balance there in USD currency. So yes, so yeah, this is how we interact with Plaid's open banking APIs, and there are many more things to do. We can do, for example, we can retrieve list of transactions. For example, retrieve transactions by, let's try to invoke this, how it looks like. Yeah. So we can see that there are multiple transactions done for each of these accounts. So we can retrieve those transactions. Basically gives us transaction history. So what merchant name it was used, I think because it's being mock data, not all fields are populated. So it's spent for food and drink in restaurants, for example, in Starbucks. Yeah. So yes, this is spending history, and we can fire another like transactions endpoint, but this time we're sending start date and end date. So we're retrieving those transactions which are limited within certain date range. Again, as you see, this time data which retrieve is different. Yeah. So to open banking again, like open banking API is like very I would say very interesting domain. As you see, Plaid has various types of endpoints available. um, I chose to follow this approach to show you the Plaid and API access Plaid API endpoints using Postman. I think this is the best way to interact with it. We could have written code and follow along that, but I think this is a better way to present the potential of open banking API by actually invoking the endpoints and understand what data we receive in return. So how can we take this experience, what we've learned so far, to the next level? So I encourage you to go and try out Quick Start from Plaid. So they have YouTube. Whoa. So they have a YouTube channel, and they publish tutorials there. So I encourage you to go there and watch YouTube tutorials and understand like what other potential to get like better picture about Plaid's potential of Plaid's APIs and yeah, and that's I think that's the best best advice I can give. Like that that's how I learned. I've just learned like there are many other like companies like Plaid in the US, like they also provide their um, access to their development environment, sandbox environment, and it's hassle free. You don't have to be like regulated individual or legal entity to access those sandbox environments. So that gives us a really good training ground. Oh, thank you very much. I'm just reading comments here. I love Postman. I love it too. Good to go. Okay. Okay. Humble personality. Is it about me? Thank you very much. I really like the way you explain things, Nadir. Thank you. It means a lot. It means a lot for me. This is my second streaming attempt, so I really like interacting with hackers, developers, using the facilities provided by MLH. Yeah, when I signed up for uh, uh, to be a streamer coach for Major League Hacking, one of my pitches was to create like safe environment where anybody can come and learn. So I'm also a learner, just like you. So yeah, we'll learn together. Um, so uh, community members, and then can you please share the link to discussion window panel? Okay, I'll ask that information. Um, not sure how to share it at this time, but yeah, we'll get back to you. Okay, yeah. Well, at this, I would like to wrap things up at this point. I think we've been running the session for hour and a half. So far, I think uh, 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 you you showed interest, and I really like it. So I encourage people to continue learning about open banking APIs. So Plaid provides really good environment, sandbox environment where we can train our skills, write some code, and really feel the potential power of open banking APIs. So this is what we did today. So we covered some theory in the beginning. So I went through how things are looking in the United Kingdom, a bit sophisticated. In the second half of the session, so we did some practical work. So we visited Plaid's website. We got developers' accounts and uh, downloaded Postman collection to our Postman account and tried to fire up some of the endpoints. Yeah, let's keep the ball rolling, and then yeah, there are many more interesting sessions are coming up in this API Global Hack Week API, specifically targeted for APIs, and so far I am enjoying it. I'm watching other sessions just like you whenever I'm not presenting. So yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and it's nice to hear and to hear from you that you're showing interest. That really gives me a real positive reinforcement to make further sessions in the future. Yeah, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, and speak to you again. Bye bye.